Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Programming in Access 2013. My name is Steve Bishop, and today we're going to be talking about queries. Now, queries come in several different forms. The ones that we're primarily going to be concerned with are the ones that interact with your data in the tables that we've already created. There are other types of queries that can actually do things like dropping or deleting entire tables or creating special functions or stored procedures, or these things called views. And those are all great for things within, especially Microsoft SQL or MySQL or Oracle. They all have those wonderful types of things. Access has some of those features as well, but for our purposes, for this particular database and just getting started, it's really just about those queries that are going to interact with our data. So what are some of the different query types that we're going to need to know in order to access and manipulate that data? Well, the first one is a select query. The next one is an insert query. Then we have update queries. And we have delete queries. Now, these are the basic types of things that you will need to be able to do with all of your data. If you look at this pretty much encompasses all the different things you could possibly need to do. You need to select it, which means you need to see it. You need to look at it. You need to, hey, this is what I want. Show it to me this particular way. An insert query is where you're going to be adding information to your database. An update query is where you're going to change some of the data that's in your query, or another good way of thinking of that is edit. And then, of course, you need to delete information sometimes. Okay? So in the select query, a select query basically just retrieves your data for you. So you can ask it, you can tell your database, hey, I want that piece of information. Then you have calculations. You can actually say, you know, I don't just want to know the actual data, but I want to be able to do a mathematical calculation or what we call a concatenation of information. You can do all sorts of different functions, and as a matter of fact, you can perform Visual Basic functions in queries, which is really cool. You can go out and build a VBA function to go take a piece of information and spit out a new piece of information for you, which is really a great functionality of Access. Then you can have a certain way that you want to display that information, a very specific format. Let's say you have maybe you have a numerical data type that's keeping track of your data as a number, but then you want to format that in some way so that it is an actual date. That can become pretty important. And we'll see as we go along how you can change the way that information is displayed. So with insert queries, an insert query is basically going to add rows to an existing table, or you can create a whole new table with data. So you can actually take information from one table and make a whole new table with just a single query, which is really, really useful, especially when you start getting into the idea of what we call temp tables. You want to create a table temporarily to hold specific information so that you can then run through it and do calculations on it and maybe store that new information somewhere else and then delete your temp table. Well, making a new table each time in one quick little query is very, very handy. So with update queries, you're going to be changing existing data. That is, you already have, let's say, a 1 in the, maybe the employee in our previous example, maybe a customer is currently assigned employee number 1, but we need to change it. They're assigned to employee number 3. So we want to change that data. We need to change that employee from 1 to a number 3. And not just changing existing data, but you can actually add data to a specific column. So sometimes when you go and you create or you're adding data to a table through one of our insert queries, we leave out certain information that we plan on adding to the table later, and the way you add that information later to the table is through an update query. So you can have a blank space waiting because you know that you're going to fill that blank space eventually with something. The way you enter that into that table, with that something, is by using an update query. And then, of course, you have your delete query. You need to be able to delete specific data or even all the data from a table, which is a little scary. You definitely want to put some checks in before you actually do the delete. You want to make sure you actually really do want to delete the data that's in there, because once it's gone, you can't get it back. You might be able to have some backups somewhere that have the query or have the data from the table in a previous point, but it's really difficult to go back and get that data and extract it and then put it back into your database once you do the deletion. So when it comes to the delete queries, you need to be very, very careful about what you're deleting. Make sure you're deleting the right things. And when we go into the delete query section, we'll definitely go over that. All right, so let's get started.